Another eventful day, hopefully. Thank you for the small majority. We haven't got quantity, but we've got quality, so thank you all for attending anyway. And we'll kick off with Julie's apologies, please, Julie.
Chair, we've got apologies from Mr Williams, Mr Cox, Mr Hutton, Mr Hewitt, Mr Sweeney, Mr Hookfield, Mrs Haddon and Mr Peters.
I know we don't get any apologies from Mr Salisbury, do we? Don't know what's happened here, but there we are. I've written on no show, so. Right, declaration of interest. Again, that's Julie. Have you got anybody put any declaration of interest to you? No, no declaration of interest. We're all pleased to be here. Minutes of the meeting held on 11th of July 2023. Can I approve those as a correct record, please?
Janet and I wasn't here.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Keith. Thank you as well. Are there any matters arising from those minutes?
Nope.
No. Right, so we go to the important one now. This is Kate Loader. She's proposed addition to the scheme of delegation to Section 53 applications under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. Over to you then, Kate.
Thank you, Chair. The papers were within the pack. There is little that I can add at this stage in terms of the paperwork other than hand over to Julie Plant, who's going to give the substantive update on this matter. Thank you.
Chair, members will recall that a couple of meetings ago they agreed a series of new delegations to the Director for Corporate Services to help streamline processes for dealing with applications for rights of way under Section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. Members will be fully aware of the situation with the Section 53s and the work that's going on to try and speed up processes, cut down on a backlog. All those delegations were designed to help with the determination of orders, as in considering the initial application and deciding whether or not there was actually an order that could be made. This delegation now helps to, or is asked for, to support work to address the backlog that's now building up, because we're determining the orders a lot faster, but now the backlog is the making of the orders, the actual work behind them, the publicising, the dealing with objections and the like. So this is a delegation that we're looking for to try and prioritise orders, the making of them, and particularly in situations where a footpath or a route might affect a key project such as HS2, which is quoted here, or a major project that the County Council's involved in, or more specifically from experience of late, where there's been quite lengthy and extremely costly cases that have gone to court or have needed lots of legal advice. And the concern is that should these take a number of years before they reach the top of the list, then that expertise and knowledge will be lost. And therefore the council would be back to its stage one again of needing to seek that advice and pursue the legal side of it. So those are the two areas where we're looking for a new delegation to make the orders in those circumstances, Chair. If members are agreeable, this would need to go through to Council for full ratification and inclusion in the Constitution, Chair.
Happy for that to go forward?
I think
Janice?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You know, we need to make sure that we're providing that support where we need to. I'm pleased to hear that it's already been recognised, the fact that some of those that maybe are at the lower end of the scale might be waiting for a very long time. And really is looking at how transparent that process will be afterwards. I think it is what's going to be important, but that's sort of the criteria for that also being recognised too. I suppose I did have one small question, which was, I appreciate there's a backlog, but is the impact of projects such as HS2 meaning that there's a lot more volume going in, which means that actually it's not just about how we prioritise it, but the resource that's also been afforded to it? If I could ask that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you. I'm not able to provide you with the data in terms of the specific impact of HS2. That's something that we can pull together and provide back in on a written basis. Not as far as I'm aware is as much as I can say. Thank you.
I think we can all agree HS2 has been a complete disaster from start to finish. It looks like it might be finishing. What the news telling us. Keith?
Yeah, I just want to say I've had quite a few applications in and around Bagnall and the other areas and tracks and other things, upgrading and all the rest of it, and I just wish that the maps were done a lot quicker after any results have been concluded, because there's still confusion afterwards. So I'm glad to see that we can get that sorted out sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Caroline?
Yeah, I think we've all got the same sort of worries. Is there enough capacity? Because if this has been going on for years, even if HS2 hasn't changed it, there's a big backlog.
Correct.
So is the capacity there? So that's the question we'd really like to know.
Kate?
Thank you. There is a substantial backlog, and there is transparency in relation to the backlog and the priority list and the matters that are awaiting determination. There is a piece of work underway at the moment in terms of looking at the capacity and considering the capacity that's available across EINS and legal services, and I'm sure an update will be available in due course. It's a project that's supported by the Change team. It's an important area that we need to consider and look at. It's underway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Right, we'll move swiftly on then. Agendas 5, 6 and 7. I'd like to thank Hassan for coming in today. He's going to take those three together. Hopefully he's got some good news for us at long last. But over to you, Hassan, then. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Chair. So our team has been in doing the audit of the 21-22 accounts. Arising from that, there are a number of amendments which impact on the 2021 accounts, and management have made those amendments. We're in the process of, for 2021, just clarifying the nature of some of those amendments. Should be getting a response to that soon. Once we receive those, then we should be in a position to conclude the 2021 audit. Members may be aware of correspondence from DLUC, which has outlined the position in terms of the public sector audit market, and the need to reset the external audit market in order for audits to be undertaken on a more timely basis. I think the intention is for the 23-24 audit to get back onto what would be a more business as usual timetable. In order to do that, there's going to be requires guidance and potentially an assessment in terms of actions that are going to be required in relation to open audit years. In correspondence that has been that's been communicated, it has been highlighted that for there's potentially going to be forms of qualified opinions in order to get to that reset. But as I said, that is just communications at this time. We're awaiting further guidance from the department and the FRC and other regulators. As a firm, we're in consultation with parties in terms of giving our thoughts on the process. But at this moment in time, we're awaiting the guidance. I think there's indications that there may be something being communicated towards the end of this month, but we wait and see. But on receipt of that guidance, we'll then consider what actions we take as a firm in order to react and respond accordingly. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Tracy, do you want to add anything to?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to add that we are working closely with Hassan and the team around just finalising the last few points relating to 2021. Hope to have that done in the next week or so. And then, as Hassan said, a sort of pause to the 21-22 while we all await the guidance that will be hopefully forthcoming soon.
Thank you. Anybody got any else questions? Janice?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's one of those where it's sort of knowing what's been in the press recently about other local authorities of a similar nature. The importance of making sure that we've got a declared and secured set of financial documents is ever so important in my mind at the moment, knowing that we deal with the same sort of things, adult social care, children's services, and very large numbers. 2020, 2021 now, it seems to be that how, you know, I can appreciate from obviously previous meetings some of the context to it, but just trying to see, is it something that we'll just keep on going until we say the guidance is here? Is there a deadline for that? Is there a deadline that we should have now? Is it, you mentioned some of the dialogue, you know, how quickly does that dialogue take place between the two organisations? Is there anything else that can be done to try and make sure that we get this finalised in hopefully before we move into the next financial year? Thank you.
Anybody else got any comments? Hassan, if you'd like to respond. Go on, Caroline, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Janet more there. But my worry is that there's still amendments now to 2020, 2021. I can't, it's my simple brain, I can't see how there can still be amendments now, because if it had finished in 2021, then the detail you're getting now, you wouldn't have got anyway. That's how my mind works. So I can't see why that hasn't been signed off. Could you explain to me?
Shall I
Be a hard job.
take the last point first of all, in terms of the amendments that are kind of arising from the audit of 21-22. We need then to reflect to see whether those same issues were relevant to 2021. You're right that if the 2021 accounts had been signed off, then that would have the opinion would have been issued, but we would have still then needed to consider whether there's a prior year adjustment in relation to the 2021 accounts. So from that point of view, we're taking account of the latest information that we do have. In terms of the first point, in respect of the current state of the as I said, of the audit market, and needing to make sure that getting into a position where audits are being undertaken for the relevant financial year on a more timely basis, and that is the purpose in terms of the announcements that have been made and the actions that are being taken in order to get to that position. To get to that position is going to require, I suppose, for want of a better word, certain overrides in order to, because what you in an ideal world, which is I think where the direction of travel, auditors will be in come the new calendar year, would be starting their audits of the 23-24 financial statements, and unless you're in a position where you're actually starting the 23-24 audits on a timely basis, the point that you're making about catching up, will it ever happen? You'll just this is a personal view, is that you'll continue then to have that domino effect. So I think you know, across the whole system, actions are going to be required to try to get to a position where you're starting the 23-24 audits on you know, on what would be on you know, on an on time basis in order to catch up. But the reporting implications for audit years that haven't yet been concluded will need to be considered. And as I said in correspondence that has been communicated, it's highlighted about the possibility of auditors issuing qualified opinions in order to catch up. There's as part of that process, there's regulators are looking into what does that mean for opening balances, etc. What does that mean for the requirements to comply in terms of the international standards on auditing. How do you get around all of those positions? But the aim of the reset is to try to get the whole market back to a position of audits being completed on a timely basis, where it informs your governance process. It's more relevant in terms of the timely communications, and you're not in a position where you've got audit years which are outstanding, which then has a knock-on impact on future years. So the current position isn't sustainable, but and hence why why it's being looked at.
Caroline, you want to come back?
Oh, okay, because it is on the same thing. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So each audit that's done, when it's finished, it really is still a snap in time. Whichever way you look at it, you can't have information of the future. And each time we're changing 2020, 2021, I can't believe I'm still saying that, 2020, 2021, each time that's changed, that has a cost implication to this council. So I need absolute assurance of you. This is the last bit. This is coming back, done and finished. You've chosen your time, and this is coming back to us finished. It can't keep going back and forward.
Keith, do you want to add to that?
Well, my question might have some relevance to it in terms of the amendments that you haven't given us details of. My concern is how significant these amendments might be. Same with Caroline. Are they going to be significant financial issues that are being slowly mushroomed over from 2021, and you're saying that this is something that could be affecting us today, in 2023, 24. And my second question really is, could something like this, the auditing and everything else like that, the internal audit, I don't know whether that's included as well within it, probably not, but the data breach, is there things that weren't doing, which are amendments 3 or 4 years ago, which could now be leaving us in somewhat of a risk area where we didn't need to be in that risk area if in fact this sort of been, the amendments you're now dealing with have been recognised. And can we please, I think we've already had this, is there any way that we can stop this from happening in the future? How far is this likely to continue into the future? I know we've got a timetable to try and complete it by 2024, but are we going to achieve that objective?
So in terms of the amendments that have been made, they are material amendments, but the amendments are broadly in the category of kind of to do with reclassifications or amendments which impacts the balance sheet. There aren't any amendments which are impacting on the overall financial position of the authority at this moment in time. so that's answering that question. In terms of the looking to get things concluded, then an audit is at a point in time, but we do need to take account of up-to-date information before we, in terms of when we issue our opinion. I've outlined that we're looking to get the 2021 position concluded shortly once we get some responses in terms of understanding or further details in terms of understanding some of the amendments which have been made. In terms of the point on whether future impacts, as I've said, this is across across the system, so it's not just an issue which is impacting on the Staffordshire County Council, but also other local authorities as well. And there is actions being taken in order to reset the external audit the external audit market, in terms of getting to a position where the audits are being completed in line with, in accordance with a more timely timetable that does meet governance requirements. But that said, there's certain actions which are going to be needed in order to get us to that, in order to get the system to that position, and that's where we're waiting for the waiting for that for that guidance in terms of what it means for yourselves as local authorities, and what it means for us as external auditors.
Thank you, Hassan. Rachel, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just 2 points really in response to those questions. So firstly, to reassure members that it is a priority for me and my team to complete the 2021 audit. We are very keen to see that finished and completed, just as I recognise that members are too. And so we are working on that as a priority. The changes that have been made are mainly, although there can be some quite significant numbers, they're mainly in the areas of disclosures. They're not necessarily changes to the financial statements, aside from the infrastructure change which has been discussed at this committee previously. And I would also just like to reassure members that although the points raised about financial stability and so on, and how do we know if the accounts are still unsigned, etc., are obviously perfectly valid. We do have other financial control measures in place, so we have the work of our internal audit colleagues that's reported to this committee, and we also have strong financial management controls and robust budget monitoring processes in place. Those reports come to Cabinet quarterly, and obviously they would be another mechanism which would flag if there was any particular financial concerns to be raised.
Thank you, Rachel. I would just like to say, I think, just closing this discussion, I think as a county council, I've never known anything. I mean, I've been a county council for 12 years and I've never known anything like it. And I think it's a shocking situation we find ourselves in. And I know Rachel and the team have frantically tried to get this sorted as well, along with the auditors. We have got a change of auditors for the next audit. I just think we've got to make sure... The one after. Yeah, the one after, and when this is completed. And I just hope that we can start off on as we mean to go on, because this is a totally unsatisfactory situation, and I think Hassan's well aware of that. So if you take that back to your colleagues and try to pull the finger out and get Rachel sorted out, I'd much appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Hassan, you can. You've got out of jail now. You can go.
Thank you, Chair.
I don't think you need it again for anything else on the agenda. Well, thank you for your attendance. I appreciate you coming in rather than doing it on Zoom. Right, we come to agenda item 8, that's Civil Contingencies Governance Annual Report for 2022-23, and I think that's over to you, Tracy. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to highlight this is the first annual report we've done, so I have brought sort of updates as and requested on specific things, but we've never actually produced an annual report as a county council before. So, like I say, as the report says, it does cover the 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023. So we are talking sort of 6 months ago, but I can give you a quick update at the end around some of the things that we've been doing since this report was written. So the recommendations then are committees requested to consider this report and the assurances provided within it, accepting that the emergency planning arrangements are fit for purpose, up to date, are routinely complied with, and have been effectively communicated and are monitored. Also, that committee members are asked to provide feedback, which then can be used to for the 23-24 work plan and onwards. So as I say, with it being the first report, I really would appreciate if there are other things that you would like to see in next year's report. So I'm not proposing to read all the way through because obviously it's a big report, so I'm just going to pick some highlights out for you. Well, I suppose explain a little bit of the structure as well. So paragraphs 2 to 11, what that just provides you some background at a national, regional and local Staffordshire Resilience Forum level, and it explains to you which organisations are involved in the Staffordshire Resilience Forum. It also explains the benefits that we do achieve as a county council by having this coordinated approach across Staffordshire. Now, not all areas actually have a resilience forum in the same way that we do. And to be fair, the Cabinet Office have actually said they see ours as sort of not so much trailblazing now because people are catching up with us, but actually quite forward thinking because we do work as a partnership of about 28 organisations and we do come together on a regular basis. So it also explains the ways that we support that multi-agency working, so the various meetings that go on across the different partnerships at different levels, and how as a county council we then play into those. Then jumping to paragraph 12, I thought it would just be useful to show you some of the key priorities that the Staffordshire Resilience Forum have focused on through this reporting period. So to give you some assurance that it isn't just us, we are looking at it as Staffordshire-wide, so various partners are playing into all of those areas because it does impact the whole of Staffordshire. Moving then on to paragraph 13 onwards, that now focuses on Staffordshire County Council. So everything from this point is our governance and our assurance. There are a couple of things I'll highlight throughout, but it's mainly about Staffordshire County Council. And paragraph 13 onwards gives you the obligations that we have as a category 1 responder. Within paragraph 15, it does highlight there the various legislation that we do have to comply with, and there is quite a number falling to local authorities, and as the upper tier, they do fall to us rather than districts and boroughs. Districts and boroughs do help and support us to deliver some of them, but the accountability sits with the county council. So moving on then to paragraphs 16 to 18, going into the governance structure. So we do have what I call a distributed model across Staffordshire County Council. So it doesn't just sit with John Tradewell as the senior exec role and me as the lead officer. We actually make sure we've got subject matter experts across the organisation. And you can see within there, it's not just about officers, there is member input as well. So within that same paragraph, it does describe, I've tried to describe some of the key accountabilities for those different groups. So just trying to give that, I suppose, that golden thread so you can see where it does go through the organisation. So moving on then to paragraph 19. So we do have the overarching policy as a civil contingencies policy, but what I was trying to explain to you, that can't answer all the questions on its own. So there is a suite of policies that sit under the civil contingency policy. That's like your overarching one. And you can see those within Appendix 1. And what I've tried to do within there is show you those that are strategic, those that are tactical, and those that are operational. There's then also within Appendix 2 their review cycle. So moving on then to emergency planning and resilience. So paragraph 21, this explains our response and recovery approach. Now what I would say is the level of response will vary depending on the size and the scale of the incident. But what I have included in Appendix 3 for you is just that full sort of national, regional and local structure. So it helps just to see where there are incidents that we may respond to as a county council, but when it's a multi-agency, at what level government departments would get involved. If I move on then to paragraph 23 and 24, this covers the emergency planning that's undertaken to meet those obligations that I talked about earlier. There are some specific plans being developed as we speak, one of them being cyber, one of them being supply chain resilience. I will cover those in a bit more detail. So moving on to paragraph 25 to 27, this explains about the business continuity framework that we've got at the moment. As I've said within there, we are reviewing it because, yes, we meet the standards in the legislation, but actually we'd like to move towards best practice. We've also recognised since COVID, actually we can probably make it a lot, now that we're all, you know, a lot more used to the tech, shall I say, we can make it a lot easier and slicker for people, and the process is a lot easier for people. So that's something that we are focusing on at the moment. Paragraphs 28 to 29, this then covers the risk assessments that both ourselves do and the Strategic Resilience Forum. And this is to make sure that obviously under the Civil Contingencies Act, we are meeting our legal duty under there. So moving on to training and awareness then, so paragraphs 30 to 37. What I've tried to do is highlight some of the things that have been delivered through this reporting period, whether that be training, exercises or awareness. But what I want to highlight is that all lessons learned from any of the training or exercise, once they're identified, it goes back through the loop and we make sure then it's incorporated in any of the plans that I've talked about within Appendix 1 to make sure that those are updated, and then again following it through to business continuity plans, and then if needs be sharing it with any appropriate partners. So if we did something as an exercise of our own and we had some learning, we would share that across the Staffordshire Partnership. So looking at 2023 onwards, so obviously after this report, what are we now focusing on? So this is covered under paragraphs 38 to 43. What I've tried to do is just explain some of the key areas, so don't think these are the only things that we're working on. What I've tried to do is just pick those high-level areas that we've started to focus on since sort of the 1st of April. So we are looking at making sure we increase capacity across a number of key roles. So making sure, have we got people out of hours who can respond, whether that be virtually or actually in person. We are adopting the training accreditation that the Staffordshire Resilience Forum have put in place, whereas previously people will have gone on a training course and an exercise, it wouldn't have been accredited, whereas now we're using standards through the university to measure actually when they've been on that training, which for individuals it probably feels more meaningful, and for us we actually know the learning's happened, they haven't just attended a course. And again, we're making sure that we've done a review of the critical services and are the business continuity plans moving towards that best practice, whilst ensuring, like I say, it is user-friendly for people, but making sure it's still got the robust governance. Supply chain resilience. Now, this is something that we are focused on, and so are many other local authorities, but it is a very wide subject. So what we've got is a focus group across a number of departments to start and look at it, because it covers procurement, it covers audit, it covers finance, individual people who are commissioning, as well as ICT, etc. So actually, when you start to bring all of those in, what I'm trying to do is get to a point where people are thinking about it in their business continuity plans, not just about the resilience of the network, but the data that they're holding as well, and how easily could we get that data back. So it is huge. I'm not expecting to have done it this year, but we should have a framework and an approach that we're going to take within Staffordshire County Council. Again, learning from others, looking at best practice across some of our partners, but mainly wider other shire local authorities who have some of the same sort of issues as us. And then the gap analysis has been carried out against the legislation, standards and best practice, and that's starting to drive this year's work plan and ensuring that that ongoing awareness happens. So what I'm looking to do is not just raise it with those who hold a civil contingency role or post. Actually, it's the wider organisation, because we've all got a part to play. My ideal would be we treat civil contingency a bit like we do health and safety now. So it's not, we've all got a part to play, but then managers have a little bit more, and then you've got subject matter experts who come in for that very top level. Whereas at the moment, I think it is seen a bit like health and safety used to be. Well, it's those strange people who sit in the corner who do all the civil contingency for us. But that is about awareness and people understanding the role they've got to play. So that is a big part that we're looking at doing going forward. So there aren't any specific equalities, legal, value for money or climate change implications that I'd want to highlight, other than those comments that are contained within the report. But I just want to draw your attention to the risk implications that are in the documentation under paragraphs 48 to 50. So that's about, and again, this is about giving you some assurance that we are putting mitigations in place. So risks are contained within our own emergency planning risk register, and any that do need to be escalated within Staffordshire County Council then form part of the corporate risk register. Any that then affect other partners are escalated through the Staffordshire Resilience Forum and form part of their risk register as well. And that works both ways. So again, if they have a risk, because we sit on that board with them, we may then, if there are implications for our residents or our duty, we'll then make sure that that's added to our risk register. Like I say, there is a programme in place for further development on the business continuity plans. The reason I flag this as a risk is it is that continual focus, not you've written a plan, put it on the shelf and forget about it. Actually, you need to be revisiting that, because we all know things move so fast, whether that be you have a change of supplier, whether that be technology changes or individuals change. So again, it's about people understanding. Don't just write it and put it on the shelf. Actually, it is a living document that you need to make sure, because heaven forbid you never know when you might need to use it. And then I suppose the final part is, I recognise, a key part of this committee's role is to give that assurance to the authority, but also council taxpayers, that the public resources invested in the council are being properly managed. And I do feel that this report is one way that that assurance can be given. So that's it for the report. If I just take us back to the recommendations then. So it is to consider that the report and the assurances provided within it, and then if committee members can provide feedback that can help us to inform the 23-24 work plan.
Thank you for that, Tracy. I must admit, it's a role I wouldn't like to participate in, I have to say. Keith, would you like to say something?
Yeah. As someone who deals with explosives on a daily basis, yes, anyway, I'll leave that point. So I think some of this sort of is something that I look at quite regularly and live and swim in it, if you see what I mean. Great to see what you're doing. Fantastic to see how you're doing it. This ongoing process. I think all that is very, very positive. I see that other people are learning from you or learning from us. I think that's fantastic as well. Just a couple of questions, and I think you've partly answered it within your presentation in any case. Was obviously this is pressurised partly from the department, you know, from the government downwards. We've seen that structure with COBRA and everything else on that one. I realise you have brought in these elements of regional and local elements within it. I just wondered, have you found any significant differences, if you like, between the different areas within Staffordshire? And I'm talking about topography, local voluntary sector, flooding, transport structure, all these other things that will have an effect as and when, well, hopefully, sorry, I put the word when in there. There will be a disaster at some time, whether we like it or not. I think we had one just in High Peak only last year or the year before with the dam going. So, you know, and we've seen what's happened in Libya and all these other places as well with dams. So, as I'm saying, I just wanted to know how you're structuring it to reflect on potential hazards in different areas. Have you done, I know there's a gap analysis type thing, but then have you then also looked at that in terms of risks in a certain area and then the supporting strategy about how you might be able to deal with that? So that's one question. And then the second one is, although you've talked about business continuity, which is any small business owner and people that run businesses is very important to see, there is an element about other businesses locally who have expertise. You mentioned data, you mentioned other areas as well, and contingencies. I didn't see anything in there about expertise from businesses necessarily coming in within the process. I just think that that's another great resource that we have within Staffordshire. We have some fantastic businesses. You know, I think Libya would have loved a few JCBs hanging around recently, you know. We have that facilities and many, many more. I just think it would be great to get that expertise in as well at some point, and then help that within the training and sort of swap within that training, you know, exercise across the whole area. And as you say, it becomes then more to do with everyone's responsibility, not just poor old John there sitting there. It should be all of us who are involved in this. And I think if we do that, then we'll be a fantastic model, I think, for the rest of the country. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
So the first part around the plans and obviously the differences, yes, we do, but we look at that as a Staffordshire Resilience Forum. So we've got various plans for flooding, for data loss, for water contamination. You know, there's various plans, and we look at that as Staffordshire-wide. What we have within them, though, is a risk register that's specific to the area. So if we use flooding as an example, there'll be particular areas that will cause us issues because it may be we've got more care homes in that area, we've got a hospital in that area, or like the one we had over winter with the snow over moorlands.
We have that every year.
Yeah, but we'd got people who receive care on our behalf, so we have specific plans for particular areas, and that's where we work really closely with the districts and boroughs, because 9 times out of 10 they know the patch better than we do. So it is about finding, we've even got plans where there's other road routes if we had to close things off. So yes, we have got those in place. And then the second part, I'm wondering whether you've been sitting in one of our meetings, because the conversation that we had is about bringing businesses in more. And again, I think that needs to be done at the sort of Staffordshire Resilience all-partner, multi-agency, because there will be different demands that we have depending on who's the lead authority. So for me, that was the conversation we'd had about, okay, how do we get more of the private sector and voluntary sector involved? Now, we have started with the voluntary sector, and the reason we approached them first is in COVID, they helped us with the response. So we'd already got that relationship and a bit of a framework. So we included, they are part of it now. They've helped us to design some of the training and the accreditation.
No, but as I say, I just think it's something if members can help on that, and or then look back to borough councils and what businesses might be useful in those areas and things like that. that's very much something that we could potentially help out with. And that's something also then, it's the training. Can I just give you one little aside on this? In early March 2020, we had a training day at SMDC for risk in contingency planning. Yeah, let's just say viruses weren't mentioned once. It was all about flooding because of the broken dam. So all I'm saying to you is that you do need to keep a very broad brush going. Certain individual did bring up the idea of having some concept that then apparently happened 10 days after. Not that I'm a premeditator of what might have happened, but it was already in the story in other countries at that time, and we just didn't seem to have that response. And I think the response we did do in the end was very good, county-wise and everywhere else. I think what we did with the resilience forums was fantastic, and the voluntary sector came on board. I just want an equivalent, if you like, across a broader area. Okay, thanks.
Caroline?
Yeah, I just want to say brilliant report, and you've asked for us to approve this to go to full council, is it, next? Where was this one going? Sorry. Just here, and you want our approval. I would absolutely give my approval of this. I think it's an excellent report, and it's obvious you're looking at all aspects and bringing everyone together. So thank you very much. I'd like to approve it. Would anyone like to second it? Thank you.
Go on, Janice.
Oh,
Yes, so I was just about to say before we do that part, I thought the idea of the businesses is critical, but also you mentioned in your verbal update there as well about district and boroughs, but also parishes. So again, we can draw back on experiences, well, parish, whether it's town or city councils, you know, their level of involvement in the grassroots, whereas, yeah, it really came to its own during recent events. So that was the only other one really that I was going to suggest. But otherwise, happy to second.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Trace, anyway. Thank you very much indeed. And carry on the good work. Thank you.
Yes.
I think you're bored, William. If it tears, he's gone.
Yeah.
Right, well, we move on now to Lisa's now's got the show, agenda item 9, review of the effectiveness of the audit. And she's got quite a few there, haven't you?
I have, yes. Thank you, Chairman. I'll probably take all three at the same time. They're all linked. They are the results of our successful workshop that we had back in May. So I've pulled together the first report, which is the results. So within Appendix A and B, you have the detailed responses that we collectively agreed as part of that workshop arrangement, both in terms of the self-assessment of good practice, so against that checklist, and also the evaluation of the effectiveness of the audit committee. So I don't propose to go through all those detailed information. What I did do within the report was hopefully summarise the key actions that arose from that self-assessment exercise. Firstly was in relation to looking at our terms of reference and making sure that they reflected the exemplar ones that were included within the updated 2022 guidance, and that's the next report on the agenda. And the second item was in relation to the consideration or reconsideration of the appointment of an independent member to the committee. And that's on the agenda for a decision to be taken in respect of that item. There was another couple of elements in relation to the improvement of the information that's provided to you in relation to risk management, and that'll be included within the forward plan, and also the opportunity for the committee to meet privately with both the internal and also external auditors, and that will be explored, and we'll arrange suitable dates and times within the forward plan going forward. And also in terms of adding additional item to the existing annual report arrangement that the committee produces ready for full council, to include a section on how this committee has added value to the work of the council. Okay, another item that we agreed to do as part of the workshop was to have a look at the knowledge and skills framework self-assessment from audit committee members. Thank you to everybody that has completed that skills framework, which I've summarised, and I've taken all of the responses and I've pulled them together into a sort of a number of potential items to go into a training programme over the next 12 to 18 months, effectively, covering the key elements that were requested. I've tried to reflect the number of individual responses that have put those particular areas down. So I would recommend that we start at the top and we work our way down, feeding those in as appropriate. So they were the key elements, and recommend those to you. So in terms of this particular report, really the recommendations are that you receive and note the responses in relation to the self-assessment. It is also good practice that this exercise is conducted on a regular basis, not annually. I wouldn't recommend annually, but at least a couple of times per committee cycle, and then also for us to arrange a programme of refresher training for members, probably under the workshop style, where items can't be covered as part of the regular agenda. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Janice?
I suppose really it's more of a comment than a question. I would say that I found that workshop event ever so informative, and having opportunity to have what I would call a healthy debate, and some of those points were debated in some detail. The attendance of that, I think, gave us a representative sample of enough people, and more than what's here today, is what I would say. So for me, it was looking at, is this sufficient to be able to draw enough of a conclusion from the people who were there? Absolutely. Yeah, I found it a very useful, worthwhile event, and the way that it's been presented in here, I think, is also useful. Thank you.
Okay.
Keith?
You might ask me a question.
I don't really have any questions other than it's
Right, next.
no, it's a bit like marking your own homework to some extent. This is, isn't it? And obviously the two things about meet the auditors and bringing in some independent people on the committee are great things. No, my only question is 155 out of 200. Is that good? Is that bad? Have we got any reference to this yet, or is it something that we have to aim for in the future when we do this again? I don't know.
Thank you. I think 155 is good. It's over 75%, so that's good. In terms of that, perhaps I could ask my colleague Debbie to take that back to the Midland Counties audit group to see if we could benchmark ourselves against other local authorities to see how they'd done, and if there's any sort of learning from that exercise, we can always bring that back as well.
Although we've been dealing with the people on this committee, I think one of the comments I did make during the training was the fact that there's another 50-odd members of this council who don't sit on this committee and don't do anything to do with the audits and everything else. They just wave them through when they get to full council more than anything else. I'm still concerned to some extent that they're none the wiser, I think, a lot of the time. That's not to say that we are the wiser, but
It's their choice, Keith.
yeah, I know, but it's their responsibility as well, and sometimes I think that's a bit sort of washed aside, as it were, you know, sort of it's over. That was all. Thanks.
Caroline? do you want to-
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this report, Lisa. I've got a little worry when I read this. The net budget for internal audit seems very small considering what has to be done, especially given this was set a few years back now, and yet you haven't, from my comment earlier on to Ernest Young, you don't see things like COVID happening and the knock-on effect of budgets taking 3 years to do a one-year budget and the extra work that you've had to do. Is this budget big enough, is my question.
It'll never be big enough, I can assure you that.
And if it's not, what can we do to push a bit more that way?
Thank you, Vice Chairman. In terms of is it sufficient, you may recall as part of the delivery of the annual audit plan, we look at the risk assessment that's required and make sure that we've got sufficient resources in order to be able to deliver that plan. In the past, we have raised issues where that hasn't been sufficient, and with the then Director of Finance and Resources and additional resources were input into the service. If we were to flag that up, and obviously if Debbie was to feel that she hadn't got sufficient, then we'd go and have a conversation with the Director of Finance, who would be very open to consideration of where, if we said that we needed additional resource, we could draw on that. I think it's about finding the right resource and the right auditors with the right skills and abilities to be able to do the work. They're not out there. There's not a glut of them. So I think it's really important that we retain the skilled workforce that we have within that service already. I think that's, for me, the bigger risk.
Absolute, and that budget just shows what an excellent team we've got because of what comes through here. So thank you again.
Absolutely, yeah. Have we got to consider these recommendations? Or? No,
Just to agree the training programme and the workshop.
Yeah. Everyone, go on, Caroline.
Yeah, I would like to agree this training programme. Can I have a seconder? Yes, Janice. Thank you.
Everyone's agreed? Yeah, thank you very much. Do you want to...
Okay, I'll move on to the terms of reference, the updated version. I sort of benchmarked our existing terms of reference that were updated a few years ago against the exemplar ones that are in the 2022 guidance. Moving to the appendices, Appendix 1, I'm really sorry, I haven't got any page numbers on the pack, which is a bit disconcerting, but Appendix A, you'll note that there's a bit of a colour scheme. The yellow areas are the new additions that we've added to the terms of reference this time, and the green ones are the new suggested ones, functions that were already undertaken by us but actually needed to be reflected within the terms of reference. So we were adhering to good practice, and the terms of reference via SIPFA have caught up with those. So this is the revised document. I would recommend that you approve this, and then it goes through to full council for formal ratification and inclusion within the council's constitution.
See others joining the two.
No.
Yeah, absolutely like
Caroline?
to approve this. I don't think we'll have any questions on this. It's again a great job and made it very clear for us.
Yeah, definitely.
It took quite a while actually to get all of that cross-reference it.
Don't go to the next.
Yeah. Okay, so the final paper from the workshop relates to the potential appointment of the independent member. Members may recall that we previously looked at this in January 2020. We did some research in relation to what the job description would be for an independent member. I've replicated that, I've reproduced that within the particular paper, within the report. And I've also highlighted the pros and cons of whether or not we wish to pursue this. This time, a lot more county councils have gone down this path, and recent research through the Society of County Treasurers, from the 28 responses received, 57% had already appointed at least one, some had got two. A further 21.5% were actively looking into recruiting a member, had been out to source an individual but had actually been unsuccessful in being able to attract the right person. And then the final 21% had not reported any activity regarding independent members. So it is about having the right person with the right skills and attributes that can be complementary to the workings of the committee and that can provide additional advice in relation to the issues that come forward as part of the agenda. So I'm happy to let or for the chairman to lead the conversation.
From my personal stance, if we had a full turnout of the members on this committee, we wouldn't need an independent member. I think it's pretty poor. I mean, since I've been chairman, and I was chairman before many years ago, we've never had a full quota. It seems to me if people think auditing the council, it's something that's a bit too much. I don't know. It's just a shame that we can't get enough people. I mean, some people have never attended one meeting, which is pretty dismal, really. But so that's my personal opinion. But Caroline?
But on the flip side of that, if we had got a personal one here today, you could have started 10 minutes earlier.
Very just call it.
Yeah, I know, sorry. Apologies again.
Have members got any views on this? No, you, Keith. You've spoken enough, Keith. Janice, you go first.
Be polite this time.
He's overruled.
Overruling a chair, Keith. That's a bit brave.
Yeah. No, I'm just concerned about the attendance really at these committees. You know, just looking at the officers we've seen today, there's twice as many officers as there are members here. Which during the whole meeting, there's some that's left already. So, I just find that a little strange, and the fact that the people attended the workshop but then don't come and attend the meetings. So I don't know what you chair might have to wave the whip or something.
To be fair, with Stephen not coming, he always brings Derek, so that was 2 down. Right. Bernard's not well. Right. So there's
some reasons for it, and yourself as well, Chair. So yeah, well done on being here today. I can only come up with what we've done at district, where we do have 2 independent members on finance, audit and finance, but we're having difficulty filling that role at the moment. But the people that did achieve that for the previous 3 or 4 years, it was good to have that independent voice available, I think would be my phrase on that. Not just from a membership point of view, but from also from an external business point of view, that maybe whoever you get employed can bring into that equation.
Well, just counter that, Keith, it's getting the right person, that's the problem. Yeah, I think all the local authorities have had that issue of a sort of... Yeah. Anybody else want to put the 5 pennyworth in? Janice?
Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting one in some respects. I think that there might be occasions where it would be beneficial if there was a certain skill set that was required for what was being debated at that time. I'm not sure if that person would actually be a voting member. So when you said about being curate, if they would actually count or not, I'm not sure. I'd have to get clarification on that one. In another respect, I think that if there was somebody there, that there might then be a potential for members to think, well, actually, they're the experts, and I'm going to absolve my responsibility onto that person, potentially, as well. So the fact that we've got so few of us here today would incline me to think that that was something that would need to be considered first if we were to do that. So I think on the sort of probability side, I'm leaning more to the fact that we might struggle to get them. If I think of a comparator as a school governing body, we might actually have ex-head teachers who come along as co-opted members, but it doesn't necessarily help. In some circumstances it does, and others not so. So I think trying to find somebody who would be appropriate to do that, that isn't then going to become an employee, because that's not what that role is designed to do, would make it quite tricky. So I think the way that we deal with some of those, for example, if we're looking at finance, we have a teaching session for all members present to be able to get the benefit of that, so we can ask those pertinent questions. And I think there is a certain level of skill set that if we were at full complement, that we would naturally bring anyway. So I would fully endorse your original comment, Chair, which was before we look at bringing in independent persons, we need to make sure that we've got a good representative attendance of those those who are currently on this membership for this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Caroline?
I've just got to say that I am absolutely an advocate of bringing in an independent. 100%, we need an independent on here. One, we do need experts in the field, but I would never look at them and say, oh, well, they know what they're talking about. We bring different skills to this committee. Every single one of us brings something different. And so that's what's needed to look. We don't need to be accountants. We really don't. We have the experts who are the accountants. But we do need people here who understand, yes, the way things work, either through business or through accounts in their own business. But we definitely need an independent on it. I mean, 50%, 57% have already gone there and we're still discussing it. Says everything to me. And it's, if SIPFA put it as a recommendation, I would they're the experts. They're the ones who we say they really know what they're talking about. We shouldn't be debating this anymore. We should be going for it. I really do think that.
Well, I don't share Caroline's passion, but I think it's more important to get a better attendance here. But because unfortunately, no one's, in my opinion, is truly independent. It's whatever their political persuasion. At the moment, we've got very few Labour members on this committee. But that will change, I'm pretty sure, the next election. But it's just getting a cross proportion of independent views is already here, I think. And sadly, today, we ain't got many, have we? So, right, anyway, the recommendation's there. So we either get on with it or we don't. And if SIPFA recommend it, we haven't got much choice, I don't think, really, have we?
Well, I think we should. So to consider...
Keith?
Just very quickly, we could, even if, well, let's just say, let's get on with it, try it. If we then feel as a committee that it's not suitable for us, then we can always change that in the future.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we ought to try it at the very least.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure the gentleman who's been attending the last few, we took him off one committee, didn't we? He's obviously, is he keen to, is it William, is he keen to, no, I'm assuming.
I don't actually know who the individual is.
Oh, don't you,
First
right.
time I've seen him.
No, he's come a few times. So he's obviously very interested in what we do, so
Very interesting.
I'm sure he'll be an application for the future. Right, so we're approving the recommendation, are we then?
Yes, I'm happy to.
John?
So we're putting the independent person into the terms of reference, and that'll be a recommendation to full council then.
Right.
And 62 members will have a view when it comes there.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. I think we're back to you, Lisa, aren't we?
Yes.
We've got a few, if you look at the agenda, 12, 13, 14, 15, they've been withdrawn or already taken. So we're now to agenda item 15, which is the forward plan for the Audit and Standards Committee. And that's back to you, Lisa, again.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. As per normal procedure, you've got a copy of the latest forward plan that gives the indicative agenda for the next meeting in October and then in December. Where and when we get the relevant external audit reports, we'll then feed them into the forward plan at the most appropriate point in time. But as you can appreciate from our earlier update, it is a little bit of a moving feast on that area. But I'm happy to take any questions in relation to the proposed agenda for the next couple of meetings.
Right, well, if there are no questions, before we move to excluding the public, shall I just have a 10-minute comfort break? People want to just...
Why don't we just move first so that they can switch the...
All right.
Chair, would you move to exclusion of the public, please, and then the
Yes,
webcast
okay.
can finish at the same
Fair
time.
enough, and
Thank
yeah.
you.
Right, so I've got to read out this exclude the public. that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended of the Local Government Act 1972 as indicated below. Thank you.